My name is Alan, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is May 31st of 2018. I have a sponsor, am a sponsor. I've worked through 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I do my best to do that on a daily basis moving forward as well. I have this really bad habit of texting people when they need help. Maria, I text Maria and asked her. Actually, I think she texted me and asked me if I was going to a meeting or something like that. Somehow I ended up sharing my story. So that's what I'm going to do. My sponsor always told me that I'm supposed to share what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now. Before I do that, I will warn you that drugs are a part of my story. Mental health is a part of my story. PTSD is a part of my story. I was in the Army. That's a part of my story. So I'm not sorry if that triggers you, because that's my story. And what it was like, I was born to two alcoholic drug addict parents in Houston, Texas. I was what they would raised back then as a crack baby. I'm not sure what they call it now. That's what they called it back then. I don't know my parents. I never met them. Gave me up when I was like a year and a half old. I have a younger sister who's estranged. She is out there doing her thing, and I don't have time for that. I grew up in foster care for a few years. My aunt and uncle found out I was alive because my grandmother, who's an amazing woman, they raised me. Here's these two people with three kids of their own in middle of fucking nowhere, Pennsylvania. And they were like, hey, we'll take you two in. Absolutely. So I moved up here. I didn't know what a stove was when I moved up. I didn't know how my name. I didn't really know a whole lot. I was like 3.5, 4 years old. And that should tell you a lot about how the foster system works. I was extremely fortunate to be placed in a household, had two very loving parents. I mean, I call them my parents. I'm a lot closer to them today because of this program than I was 4 years ago. I was a good kid, went to church like 14 times a week. That's what it felt like anyways. Really religious household. Did the Sunday church, then family dinner on Sundays and sports. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I mean, I had the picturesque, what you would think from the outside anyways, was perfect. My dad was abusive, liked to throw me around. Turns out, parent of 5 now, I suddenly get that anger. I can understand his anger, right? As a parent now, I was a very frustrating teenager. I got addicted to porn at a really young age. So that was like stealing credit card style addiction. Turns out it's free online. Didn't know that back then. So I, like, from a very young age, I was stealing things to make myself feel good. I wasn't happy just normally. So I had to find outside influences to make me feel whole. Went through high school. I was your typical emo goth punk. That was the thing when I grew up, though. Marching band. I played some sports. I was terrible at sports at a young age. I weighed like 110 pounds when I graduated. Just awkward, right? But a lot of people liked me because I was funny. So, I played that card, and that's what I ran with. I don't really remember my first drink. I'm pretty sure I didn't get drunk. I don't remember it, but I know that I drank at like prom, maybe a drink or two at prom parties. I smoked. I liked to smoke marijuana as a teenager. That was my thing. Went to college, went from one middle of nowhere town to another middle of nowhere town to go to college. And I told you I was really religious. My family was. They tried to keep me under a rock. So I went to college and like there was no rocks anymore. It was just go do you, baby boo kind of deal, right? And so I did. Like, man, right off the bat, drugs, alcohol, women, parties. My first semester, I managed to like keep my shit together. I did like a 3.7, 3.8, something like that. By 2 years in school, I finished. My last semester, I had like a 0.18 GPA. It was like stupid low. I ended up leaving with like a 1 point something. They politely informed me that they prefer I didn't come back, but they couldn't kick me out because I hadn't been on academic probation yet. So I did what any person at late teens, early 20s would do, and I joined the Army. Thought that was a great idea. It was. I loved it. Loved everything about it. It messed me up pretty hardcore. I remember my first party that I got drunk at, though. There were like stripper poles. It was a frat party. A lot of people talk about it. Very similar to how I'm going to talk about it. I remember taking my first drink, and I remember feeling buzzed, and I was like, oh, I like this. Like all of a sudden, man, like I didn't feel as awkward. I didn't feel as weird. All of a sudden, the girls thought I was funnier. I thought that the girls thought I was funnier. They probably couldn't even understand what I was saying. But in my head, everyone thought I was the coolest cat in town. And man, as soon as I found that, man, I thought that was it. This is what I've been looking for my entire life. This makes me a part of. This fills that hole of hate and anger. So then I joined the military. I did some things. 82nd Airborne to 502. Went to sniper school. I had some really cool experiences, and I had a lot of not really cool experiences. Some missions were not cool. I did not enjoy them. So fast forward, I'm now using this alcohol to drown out all of that stuff. So I went from using alcohol to become a part of and to have fun to using alcohol to forget. And what that does for someone like me is it turns me into a blackout drinker. Fairly early on, having a really good time. And people tell you that they never had fun drinking, they're fucking lying. I had a lot of fun drinking. That's why I kept drinking, because I was searching for that fun. Like there was a point that I enjoyed it and then I didn't. And I still kept drinking, thinking that I was going to find that point again. So I go through all the military stuff and the VA and the counseling and now that works. And I'm drinking and now I'm bartending because I figured out that as a bartender, I'm allowed to drink. Like they don't care. They'll even pay me to drink. I can make money and get blackout drunk and it's okay. They don't care if you do drugs. You can pretty much do whatever you want. Nobody cares. I'd gotten hurt. That's why I wasn't in the military anymore. I busted up my knee. I was on some pain meds for a while, but that really wasn't my thing. I was more of an upper kind of guy. I did a lot of cocaine, so I could drink a lot more, right? Like I would get drunk and then do cocaine and then get drunk. That would be like a 3 or 4 day event for me. Started getting in trouble, right? So like up until this point, it hadn't been too bad. Like I didn't really get in any serious trouble. 25, 26. First DUI was like a joke, slap on the wrist. I got 6 months probation and they were like, just don't do it again. Cool. I did community service and that's about it. 2012, 2013, I totaled my car. Got my second DUI. I told myself. Coming back from a week of working out of state where I didn't have the opportunity to really drink. So what do I do as an awesome alcoholic? Well, I reward myself. I haven't really drank in a week. I go party. I did. And then I drove home, but I did make it this time. Flipped my car end over end. My BAC was a 0.18. That was like at the low point. Ironically, like they told me that my BAC was probably a lot higher than that, but they didn't want to wait. So at that point, I went to jail. I went to jail for 11 months. I did a month on house arrest. They sent me upstate for a little bit to classify me. I wanted to do some things. I was up there for like 90 days. I was on work release at one point, and it sucked, man. At this point, I had some kids. I have 5 kids now. At that point, I think I had like 2. My third child, my second daughter, was born while I was in jail. That really sucked. I had to meet her in handcuffs. That was interesting, humiliating. The only thing that was really great about that was that's where I found AA. So I learned about AA the very first time when I was in jail. I get out of jail. I don't stop drinking. We fast forward because we all know how to live in that cycle of drink, try to get sober, repeat. So I did that for a while. It was terrible. Everybody hates doing that. It's a nightmare. It's a living nightmare. It's exhausting. I wanted to die most of the time. I drank and did so many drugs trying to die. I'd not dealt with any of my trauma from as a child all the way through the military. I got like 11 months sober and I relapsed. In that time period, I got married and then I relapsed. So my ex-wife married a sober man, ended up with a drunk man, stayed for like 4 or 5 months and left. I thought it was like a week or two. It turned out to be like 2 months almost before she came back. I remember waking up one morning and I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. It was Memorial Day weekend. Partied like good alcoholic parties, blacked out, did all the drugs, did whatever I could get my hands on. I'm a garbage can of depression, right? So stuff it all in so I don't have to feel. Woke up and I just can't keep living like this, man. I'm either going to kill myself or it's just going to be the longest, slowest, most painful death could ever imagine. Called my sponsor. That's what I call him. I didn't use him as one until this point. I told him that. He said the first thing he told me is, well, you probably should not bartend anymore. And I said, you know what? Fine. Let's just work the steps. It'll be fine. I go to a meeting and I'm supposed to go to this bar to bartend afterwards. And I ended up not going because I'm sitting at this meeting and I'm thinking, probably right. I'm not going to be able to stay sober at this bar. Like they give me fifths of vodka to drink when I walked in the door. This was like your typical Irish bar, man. I ended up quitting that night and I went through the steps with my sponsor. I was working this job as a manager. I ended up quitting and I went to Pensacola for my first time. And if you don't know what Pensacola is, it's the Pennsylvania State Conference of Young People and Alcoholics Anonymous. I happen to have just been the general chair for the Williamsport host for Pensacola. That was probably one of the craziest, awesome, most stressful experiences I've ever had. And I have 5 kids, so that's saying a whole lot. So I went to Pensacola, man, and it completely changed my life. I remember sitting at the Saturday night meeting and they do this thing called a sobriety countdown. I get really excited when I start talking about this because this is when my sobriety changed. So I'm sitting at this sobriety countdown and I'm 4 months sober and they're doing the countdown and it gets to me and I jump up and I'm like doing all the things. And then 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, 24 hours. And this girl stands up and she is a ugly crying. Like, if you know what I'm talking about, just the snot and the tears and the sobbing. And I'm pretty sure every single person there touched her at one point. Compassion that I had never seen in my entire life because I was a crack baby. So I didn't really understand compassion. I'd never really seen it. Even the household I grew up, I was somewhat of an outlier. So I didn't really understand compassion the way that it was shown to this young girl with less than 24 hours sober. It blew my mind. And I was like, man, I want that. I want to be the guy with 40 years going up to the girl with less than 24 hours and being like, been there and it's going to be okay. Like, that's what I wanted. So I went after it. They do this thing up here. It's a men's winter retreat. I went to that and that was awesome. Another bridge on my sobriety. 2 years into my sobriety, I get divorced. My ex-wife left in the middle of the night when I was at work, took my kids, found out that I might have a tumor, then I didn't have a tumor, then I did have a tumor. Now I guess I don't have a tumor. They thought I had cancer. It was a whole thing. I went through all this crazy stuff in like 8 months, stayed sober. Went through COVID, stayed sober. I was stayed sober during COVID because of this meeting. Right before COVID happened, I ended up being a speaker at this meeting. And then for some reason, I just never left. It saved my life. And then we flash forward to what it's like now. I'm still a hot mess sometimes. I still think I know what's best for myself sometimes. I take my will back and I do really stupid things like hurt people that I care about. I was engaged and I pressured my ex-fiance into getting married. Didn't realize I was doing it at the time. And turns out that I like to talk over people. Never knew that. Turns out that I have a bit of aggression and anger. July, my counselor and I started to work through all the trauma that I had dealt with in the military. And then she left, went to a new practice. So I couldn't get in with her for like a month and a half. So I didn't do anything. Instead of doing what she told me to do and what my sponsor told me to do and go find someone to work with until I could work with her again, I didn't. And I just became angry. I didn't sleep and I didn't eat. And if we're being honest, I had a really nasty depression. I didn't drink, right? Because that's all I was capable of, is just not drinking. And I'm here to tell you that if today the only thing that you've done right is not drinking, you had a really good fucking day. Because as long as I don't drink, tomorrow has the potential to be a lot better. But if I pick up night, I'm going to pick up tomorrow. I'm going to pick up on Sunday. I'm going to pick up on Monday. I'm going to pick up on Tuesday. And I'm not going to stop picking up until my life again gets bad enough that it's going to force me or I'm going to die. For a month and a half, I white knuckled sobriety. And I'm telling you, that is a terrible idea. I've been talking to my sponsor a lot more. I went to like 3 meetings last night. Found this like 4:00 in the morning meeting the other day, and it was amazing. You know, I started taking care of myself in the past like couple of days, past couple of weeks. And this crazy thing has happened. It's like this fog has been lifted. My higher power has been doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. I do not encourage you to do that. It is a miserable time. But what I can tell you from here is that at 4.5 years sober, when I was 3 months sober, man, I was like, at 4.5 years sober, man, I'm going to know everything. I don't know anything. I know nothing. You know what I know? I know that if I want to stay sober, I need to go to meetings, need to call my sponsor, I need to pray. As long as I do those things, man, I have a really good chance of staying sober the next 24 hours because I didn't do those things and it was a little touch and go. It's a miracle that I'm still sober today. You know, the past like 48 hours, I've had a lot of epiphanies about my life. And one of the biggest ones is that I don't need to neglect myself. And if you read the daily reflection at all today, it talks about that, right? Like, we're all just human and we all make mistakes. And it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And that's okay. Just because I'm still here and a lot of my friends in the military aren't, doesn't mean that I'm not supposed to be here. It doesn't mean that I don't need to eat 3 to 4 times a day. Doesn't mean that I don't deserve to do those. For any of you out there that are doubting if you deserve to be here, and I'm going to tell you that you do, because you are. I needed someone to tell me that. I needed someone to go, man, you're worth it. Go eat a meal. Go take a nap, take a shower, and get up and let's do this thing. No one's told you today that they love you. I do. I love you very much, and that's all I have. Thanks.